Welcome to Speaking from the Purple Couch, where we explore the depths of human experience. We share stories, issues, and situations that will ignite understanding and empowerment. Subscribe and be part of the journey. Because empowerment begins with conversation.
Hello and welcome. So, today the question is, how much more can we take? At times we feel like we're taking steps forward, and then it's like 1,000 steps backwards. And the question is not dramatic. It's actually diagnostic. It's the sound that a weary people make when pressure has stacked faster than processing. Like when the headlines blur into heartache, and when today feels like the last straw instead of just another page on the calendar. What we've witnessed over the last couple of weeks, and especially today, has just been events after events. It's been accumulation, compounding contradictions like truth bent, justice delayed, compassion rationed, accountability accountability avoided. I can't even say it because it seems like it's just not happening. Accountability avoided. It almost seems like it might be unsurvivable. Together we press on the collective chest like a weight we didn't consent to carry. How much more can we take? Is really asking, how long can systems keep failing before people stop pretending that they work? How many times can we be told to be patient while urgency is reserved for power and profit? How often can the moral burden be shifted onto the public while decision makers remain insulated from consequences? How many more unalivings? Here's the uncomfortable truth. People are not weak for asking this question. They are awake. Fatigue is not failure, but it's real. It's the body politic saying this is not sustainable. History shows us something important though. It shows us that the breaking point is rarely the end. It's like the turning point, the reset. The moment when silence becomes speech, when despair becomes discernment. It's like when endurance gives way to insistence. Oppression counts on exhaustion. It does. Transformation is born when exhaustion meets clarity and we don't give up. So maybe the better question isn't how much more can we take? Maybe it's what are we willing to no longer tolerate? And what are we finally ready to demand? Because every era that changed courses did so when ordinary people like you and I stopped absorbing the shock and started redirecting the force. This moment feels very heavy because it actually is. I'm not naive, but heaviness also means mass. Like a mass when it moves together, it changes the direction of history. The question has been asked over and over again. The answer is forming. I just want to believe that there is hope. That's what I want to foster here, that there has to be hope. This is like muscle memory hope. The kind that shows up when people decide they no longer will be managed by fear or distraction or fatigue. Let's dive deeper about, is there any hope? Because I know it feels like that. It feels like we are all walking in a sea of despair. Hope right now doesn't even seem like there's some type of relief around the corner, but it can look like clarity. What's happening in this moment over these last weeks is an unveiling. Masks are slipping, narratives are collapsing under their own weight. Institutions that relied on trust without accountability are being forced into the light. And yes, it may seem like it's a creep and a crawl, but it is happening. And that's not comfortable, but it's necessary, and hope does exist because people are paying attention instead of numbing out. Conversations that were once whispered are actually now being spoken plainly and out loud. And the public is beginning to connect dots instead of consuming headlines in isolation. We are trying to be more educated. We're trying to educate. Um, and here's the quiet truth many don't say out loud. The system is far more afraid of an informed, grounded, morally awake public than it is of outrage alone. Anger burns out. Awareness, though, reorganizes and strategizes. Hope is not that things will magically improve. Hope is that we are no longer confused about, hmm, what is broken. We're not in la la land anymore. And we ask ourselves why it feels so heavy. I mean, this season feels almost unbearable because we are carrying two loads at once. We're carrying the weight of what is happening now and the grief of realizing how long it's been happening. That second weight, the betrayal of trust, the recognition of manipulation, the awareness of systematic disregard, it hits deeper. It shakes identity. It actually forces a reckoning. But reckonings are the birthplace of reform. So what is the call to action? It can't be chaos. It can't be despair, not performative outrage, and not continued speeches. The call is discipline, courage, and strategy. We have to refuse amnesia. We have to stop acting like we don't know what's going on. you know, do not let today be forgotten by next week's distraction. Yes, it's piling on, but we have to continue to keep it at the forefront because it all comes together. You know what I'm saying? It all comes together. We have to support the truth tellers, the journalists, the advocates, um, and the legal minds who are grounded in facts and not spectacle or propaganda. Memory is power because if we don't forget, we won't really know how to forge forward. We have to move from reaction to intention. Outrage is understandable, but intention is transformative. We have to ask better questions and demand receipts, not rhetoric, okay? Slow the moment down long enough to see who benefits and who bears the cost and the cross. And clarity dismantles manipulation. So we need to be clear on what's going on. We need to strengthen our communities, not just commentary, because at times you get frustrated with these constant speeches. but we need strategy. We need action. Isolation is the pressure point being exploited. Talk with real people, offline, online. Build micro communities of discernment. Check on those who are spiritually, emotionally, or economically strained. We have to now be our brother's keepers. We have to understand that we can't face this alone. We can't be an island. Apply pressure where it counts. Change doesn't come from screaming into the void. You know, support understanding what's going on. Show up to local meetings, hearings, school boards, councils. Uh, Follow the paper trail, budgets, policies, filings. Power responds to sustained, informed pressure. And protect your inner ground. That is not escaping. It's kind of strategy, because you're going to still have to guard your mind and your spirit and your body throughout all of this. You know, Sometimes you have to pull back, and sometimes we have to rest, but not disengage. Because I understand about the 92%, and the warnings that we said we've given people. And yes, but we still need to not just stop doing anything. Yes, we need to pray, meditate, breathe, and ground ourselves, because this is stressful. It's almost like you are experiencing PTSD, because every day is something new. Every day is something new. We're burnt out. People are burnt out. And the more we're burnt out and fatigued, easier it is for them to gain control. But grounded people will resist, and no one will be able to control. And a hard but honest hope is hope that someone else will fix this. Hope is that enough people are waking up at the same time, not to panic, but to posture, to stand, to say, this ends with us. Paying attention, staying engaged, and refusing to be moved off of the truth. Stand on the truth. History bends when the weary decide they will no longer be quietly compliant. So if you're asking, how much more can we take? You're already standing at the threshold of the answer. And the answer isn't collapse, it's collective resolve. Let's reflect back on Martin Luther King, who was just celebrated earlier this week, and the inconvenient things that the people during the civil rights movement endured. Listen, everything from, you have to be fed from the back door, water hose, dogs coming after them, being arrested, crosses being burnt on their lawns, bombs being thrown through their windows, being unalived. How how we are somewhat kind of soft. If we are not going to be outside, we can do it with our dollars. And I'm talking kind of like to the 90% that I'm a part of. We saying we're not going to be outside, but we can do it with our dollars. Stop supporting these companies that are allowing these uh militias to assemble in their parking lots. The question is, you may think your dollar not spent will not make a difference, but it will. Can't you just be inconvenienced for a minute? Yes, we may not be able to buy that specific food item or brand that is sold in the store you should stray away from. But as the civil rights era folks were more inconvenienced than we will ever be because of specific item, find an alternative. And now look at the inconvenience happening now with the loss of these lives lately. That is beyond inconvenient. So please bring out the things that we need to focus on if we're not going to be out in the streets. It's not to shame, but to wake us up to what we can do. You know, when we invoke Dr. King, we often quote his dreams, but we forget his discomfort. We just commemorated Martin Luther King this week. And it's important to be honest about what the civil rights movement actually required of ordinary people. not slogans, not hashtags. It required sacrifice, inconvenience, risk. People were denied access to basic sanitation. Again, they were met with dogs and fire hoses for daring to just stand still, arrested, jailed, beaten, and economically targeted, intimidated with crosses burning in the night. And even then, they were unalive for registering voters, for boycotting on buses, or simply existing in public, walking down the street. They didn't have the luxury of opting out because it was uncomfortable. Discomfort was the entry fee for dignity. So now let's be honest with ourselves. I mean, we are in so many ways, again, I'm saying we kind of soft, not because we don't care, but because we've kind of grown accustomed to convenience as a right and not a privilege. Today, the idea of resistance often collapse under statements like, that won't make a difference. It's just one purchase. I can't inconvenience myself. Where else would I shop? And yet, inconvenience is exactly how change has always been applied. I, if we're going to be, if we're going to be inside, then we can economically present. If marching isn't accessible, if being physically present isn't possible, there is still power, immense power in our dollars. So let's be clear. When these companies again let the militias assemble and organize or stage in their parking lots or facilities, they are not neutral. They are participating, and participation deserves a response. My $1 won't matter. That's a myth. Every major movement has tried to convince people of this lie. The Montgomery bus boycott wasn't powerful because of one person. It was powerful because thousands of people chose inconvenience together. $1 may seem insignificant, but many dollars together, thousands of dollars together, including your $1, alter quarterly reports, trends trigger boardroom conversations, sustain boycotts, force policy reviews, and corporations understand numbers. That's what they understand, the pocket. They don't understand moral appeals, only market shifts. Your absence is louder than your outrage, your absence of your dollar. So can we be inconvenienced for just a minute? Yes, you may not be able to buy again that specific brand, that specific food item, that familiar, comfortable option. But let's be real. Civil rights era families just they they didn't just miss a product. They missed safety, employment, their homes, their loved ones. But they found alternatives because they had no choice. You can find an alternative grocery item. You can shop elsewhere. You can adjust temporarily. That is not hardship. That is solidarity. You will not pass out on the street if you don't get that clown day bar or whatever. You will not leave Earth. Look at the inconveniences we're witnessing today. Let's name it plainly: the loss of life, families torn apart, children traumatized, communities disabled. This is not inconvenience, this is irreversible harm. If we struggle to give up a brand, a store, or a convenience while others are searching and dealing with so much more, what? I, I, I don't understand. Let's just sit that right there for a moment. Let's just sit that right there for a moment. Because these families are losing everything. Then all we're asking is just that small sacrifice. We're being asked to reorder our priorities for those who have had no choice. Dr. King warned us about the moment. He spoke not just about overt injustice, but about the tranquilizing drug of gradualism, about people who preferred order over justice, about those who agreed in principle but resisted in practice. He understood that the greatest threat was not only violence, but comfort that delays action. Comfort, get that. Comfort that delays action. So the call then is simple, but not easy. Be willing to be uncomfortable. Be willing to change habits. Be willing to spend differently. Be willing to say, my convenience is not worth someone else's life. This is not about perfection, it's about participation. If we honor the legacy of those who endured those water hoses, the dogs, the jail cells, and the loss of life, then the least we can do is endure some temporary inconveniences. Because history will not ask what we posted, it will ask what we were willing to give up. And the truth is, if they could endure that, we can endure this. So, just a word of wisdom. Let's come sit down for a moment and let's breathe. Because strength doesn't mean unaffected, it means honest about the cost. What we are witnessing, what we are absorbing and carrying right now is not light. It is layered trauma, repeated images that we see every day, almost every minute on the hour, constant urgency, moral injury, collective grief, and the fear that nothing feels stable. I have wept so much in this last year. I could have cried a river, a ocean. That does something to our nervous system. It can imprint, it can linger, it can become PTSD, truthfully, even when the harm isn't happening directly to us, especially for those who are empaths. And there is no shame in that. The civil rights era produced heroes, but it also produced people who carried lifelong scars. Many never had language, space, or permission to heal. We do, and we must use it. So here's the wisdom: you can be brave and still need some therapy or talk to someone. You can resist injustice and still rest your mind. You can be spiritually grounded and still need a professional to help untangle what this season is doing to your body and your soul. Therapy is not weakness, it is maintenance for people who refuse to go numb. If you feel anxious, irritable, exhausted, hypervigilant, or emotionally flooded, that is not a personal failure. That is a normal response to what is going on in these unprecedented times. It's prolonged stress and moral distress. It's called um, righteous indignation. Healing does not mean disengaging from truth. It means learning how to hold truth without it breaking you. And there are times I had to step back and you know decompress and refresh. So yes, march if you can, boycott with intention, and apply pressure where it matters. But also turn the volume down when your spirit needs quiet. Talk to someone trained to help you process trauma. Protect your sleep, your breath, your inner child. Because the goal is not just to survive this moment, my brothers and sisters. The goal is to remain whole enough to keep showing up. And here's the final wisdom from speaking from the purple couch. A burned out activist cannot outlast a well rested, well supported one. So healing is not a retreat from the movement. It is how the movement stays alive. And one thing you can do is call your congressional reps. And that number is 202-224-3121. That's 202-224-3121. And they'll ask you for your zip code, and then they will connect you to the proper congressional representatives. And even tell them how you're feeling. You know, if you are their constituent, you voted them in, then they should be very concerned about how you're feeling at this moment and what you need them to do. This isn't about this isn't a political situation. This is a moral situation. This is a situation where we're calling on justice and we are standing as we the people. So to close all of this out, I just want to lift up a prayer. Creator of justice and keeper of our souls, we come to you carrying the weight of this moment, the grief we see, the fear we feel, the questions we don't yet have answers to. Strengthen our hearts where they are weary. Steady our minds where they are overwhelmed. Heal the hidden wounds forming in us from what we have witnessed, and guard us from becoming hardened, numb, or indifferent. Give us courage, not reckless anger, but disciplined resolve. Teach us when to speak, when to act, when to withhold our dollars, and when to rest so we can rise again with clarity and purpose. Cover those who are suffering unjustly. Protect the vulnerable. Comfort the grieving, and awaken the conscience of those who hold power without compassion. Remind us that inconvenience is not sacrifice and silence is not neutrality. Let our choices reflect our values and let our resistance be rooted in love, wisdom, and truth. As we leave this space, keep us whole, keep us grounded, keep us brave enough to care and wise enough to heal. Heal our nation. We move forward not in fear, but in faith, not in despair, but in determined hope. Bless us and God bless the United States of America. Amen. You all be blessed and have a great day. And tomorrow we will be interviewing an attorney who has went through the fire. And I hope that you will come and be inspired by her story. Have a wonderful afternoon, and let's keep hope alive.
Thanks for watching. Like, share, and subscribe.